Definitely peripheral elements going on there as we get down to our match. Jonathan Hobbs, our 4 seed against Aaron Diaz, the 8. Apologize here, you might hear a smoke detector in the background. Actually going to mute for a second if you want to carry.
All right, so looks like Hobbs is taking a mulligan. So, but a pretty land-heavy hand, but that's okay in these matchups. It's important that you hit your mana. It's also important that when you don't have a counterspell, that you bluff a counterspell.
All right,
over to Diaz's side.
My apartment is successfully not burned down. Knock on wood. All right, Hobbs on a mold of 5 here. Is that right?
No. Hobbs is on 6. Was on the
6,
play.
Okay, cool.
Diaz just led with a trio, and now going back to Hobbs' way, and he's kind of bluffing Growth Spiral here.
Just trading lands. Now Hobbs has a look at Uro. Pretty good ramp spell in its own right.
Yeah, it's certainly fine. It's a card that I am aggressively Mystical Dispute the front half, the same way I would Mystical Dispute a Growth Spiral, because in effect they're very similar. And it's important that you contain mana acceleration. And as the game goes longer, cards like Mystical Dispute get a lot worse.
So it was gusted to the top. Hobbs decides he'd like to draw that one again. It's not a bad one to have around. Just a tapped land for Diaz. It was a temple. Hobbs is going to crack a Fabled Passage.
Yeah, it looks like Hobbs is about to go for this Teferi, and it's going to be met with a Mystical Dispute. And that's going to maybe open up the door for Aaron to resolve something big next turn. See if they can find something. Not quite enough mana for Nissa yet.
All right, Teferi down. Growth Spiral picked up by Diaz. Not the worst, but certainly not the best.
Yeah, can Growth Spiral into a forest and cycle the Triome if that is what they want to do.
Another look at Uro from Hobbs. Diaz will fire off Growth Spiral. Picks up a Ketria Triome, puts it on the battlefield as we see the front half of Uro resolve for Hobbs. And a Dovin's Veto picked up. That's pretty nice against this Nissa.
Yeah, it's going to be an actual hard counter, and there's not going to be a whole lot that Diaz can do about it. Even though they have Expansion Explosion, there's very little reason to wait to be able to use a copy Expansion, because even if you copy a Dovin's Veto, it can't counter the first Dovin's Veto.
Veto gets the job done. Hobbs picks up and casts a Growth Spiral. Now he'll hang out with an Ether Gust. Waiting as Diaz picks up a Jolrail.
Yeah, now the Jolrail and then the cycling of the Triome can generate a 2/2 body. We'll see if Diaz wants to play this little tricky. Could just go for a medium-sized Expansion Explosion to draw 3 cards, but I think just going for this small ball pressure is a bit stronger.
Here is the attempt at Jolrail. Hobbs can think about whether he wants to Ether Gust this or not. You got any thoughts on that play?
I don't mind letting it resolve and then waiting for them to play their card draw effect, because as it sits, it's not that big of a deal. But here now you can Gust in
cycle the Triome, yeah, and the Gust goes at Jolrail.
The only downside to this play is that if Diaz wants to be efficient with the mana, can just put it on top, draw it, and then replay it immediately with the 2 excess mana left over. But ends up picking up a Mystical Dispute, the perfect card here to counter this hero from the graveyard.
Yeah, really nice pickup off the cycle as Uro attempts to escape. No. Back to the underworld with you.
Yeah, just an unbelievable pickup there. And now gonna Expansion Explosion here for 4 and draw 4 cards. This is huge, folks.
Yeah, single blue mana on tap. That might give Diaz some pause, but I don't know. Resolving a draw 4 here seems real nice.
Yeah, when both players have basically used up all their resources and are kind of just left with nothing much else after. The draw 4 cards is a pretty big deal, but Hobbs, no slouch of his own, picks up that Nisu, shakes the world. It's time to go to town, man.
Really nice pickup. Diaz's draw 4 was okay. Big pickup was Sublime Epiphany, but another explosion off the top to pair with this Wilderness Reclamation. See, Reclamation
Hobbs
attempted Hobbs just with the Growth Spiral. That Reclamation is good.
Yeah, kind of desperately digging for some piece of interaction, doesn't find it. Now the mana advantage is going to go back Hobbs' way. It's hard to explain just how important it was to resolve this Reclamation, because now they get to float all this mana, and I believe they have enough mana to Expansion Explosion the Nissa to death and draw roughly 8 cards. So, rough quick maps, 9 cards. If they want to tap out or not, it just
5,
depends.
6, 7. Yeah, it looks like 10 is the limit.
Yeah, just hold up mana to pay for Mystical Dispute, I guess. Yeah, so it's going to be an expansion for 7. Max was 10. I was pretty close.
Yeah, the difference between 9 and 10, fairly negligible. I mean, even if we're talking about leaving up paying for Dispute against a Nissa, 6 would do it. Diaz maybe decided that if there was a Dispute there, I would have seen it already. Yeah, here's the full explosion for 10. And oops from Jonathan Hobbs, and he'll pick him up.
Oh man, that's brutal. It wasn't quite lethal, but it was going at the Nissa, and that was going to leave Hobbs with basically nothing left in the tank, and Diaz drawing a brand new grip and then some. And Hobbs sees the writing on the wall, packs in for game 1, and we have a victor for that first game of the match. Hobbs here going to look to the sideboard to see if he can get some help.
See, what often happens here for the Team Reclamation deck, any red card in the 75 goes to the sideboard, though this is a pretty innovative build, as you mentioned, for Aaron Diaz. You know, no main deck Scorching Dragonfires. Things a little bit different. We have Joel Rail, we have Land of War Visionary, we have Sublime Epiphany, and all these cards are fine to good against Bant.
Yeah, exactly. There's very little reason to bring in a bunch of red removal. There's very few creatures. Most of the cards in the main deck are quite good, and the fact that they're all proactive was a conscious decision in deck building from Diaz. You know, there's a reason why. There's not 2, there's not 3, there are 4 copies of Nisu Shakes the World in the main deck of this Team of Reclamation deck. There are only 2 copies after sideboard here left in the deck because it's not that good against Bant. Usually see it side out quite a bit against decks with Teferi, and especially so because Nisu Shakes the World is a proactive way to do something very similar while also being able to pressure Teferi. It's such a huge shift in the paradigm of this type of matchup. It's one of the reasons why Diaz probably had so much success today.
Yeah, really just toning down the vulnerability to Teferi. How about just giant 5-mana threat / engine? That seems pretty dang good.
Yeah, it turns out one of the best cards in Standard over the last 2 years. Still one of the best cards in Standard over the last 2 years. You're playing a green deck and you're not playing Nissa Who Shakes the World, then what are you even doing?
Ban everything until Nissa is the best card, then ban Nissa.
Well, they almost did it. They're just so close. Oh, another 7-lander here for Hobbs, and you got to feel for him. He's having to mulligan so much with this deck. That's what you get for playing 29 lands, I guess.
We've seen him fight through a lot of mulligans to this point. Can he do it one more time? Back against the wall, down a game in top 4. Gonna keep on 6, and it's a solid enough 6. 4 lands, Growth Spiral, Shark Typhoon.
Yeah, seems fine. Diaz on 6 as well. Going to probably put back the Sublime Epiphany because it's so expensive. Want to save that one for later turns.
Catch for your Triome and a call. Triomes for both players. It
Check.
looks like you're getting into Growth Spirals for both players.
Yeah. Growth Spiral is check. Growth Spiral plus Mystical Speed is raised. All right. I would be surprised to see a main phase Growth Spiral here from Diaz to go ahead and get that on the battlefield. It's a little suspect not to do it. Like, if you're Hobbs and they had Growth Spiral, you would assume that while the shields were down, they would do it. But they get to bluff a negate in case of a Teferi Time Raveler, so I understand why Diaz would choose to wait. Oftentimes, the threat of the thing is as good as the thing itself.
Yeah, it's a spot where Diaz maybe thinks, the Growth Spiral is just going to resolve, or maybe doesn't care that much if it gets tagged. You just see Joel Rail showing up. Hobbs is going to fetch in response. The hand is 3 lands and a Shark Typhoon.
Yeah, you have to imagine that this is going to be either posturing or that Hobbs is going to go ahead and say, okay, Joel Rail resolves, in a turn I'm going to cycle this Shark Typhoon, you know? Need to get some traction, has nothing going on, just 3 lands in that Shark Typhoon in hand. It's only going to get +1/+1 each turn if you wait to make it bigger, so it's not even that big of a change. And cycling Shark Typhoon not only pushes you towards finding food for Euro, but helps you to find a Shark Typhoon for later in the game as well.
Joel Rail is in, so is the Baby Shark. Hobbs picked up Uro. We go back his way. Draw step for turn to Teferi Time Raveler, so contents of the hand have improved. The question is whether he can resolve anything, facing down an Ether Gust and a Mystical Dispute. An attempt on Uro, Ether Gust. It's going to target that. And Hobbs will take that action. Plenty of land drops to fight through more cards like Mystical Dispute.
Yep, plays a Plains and passes turn to bluff a Dovin's Veto. So Aaron Diaz, even if he drew Nissa Who Shakes the World, which he did, doesn't have the mana to cast it, but may not even cast it, depending on the situation, if they had the option.
Joel Rail is going to knock Hobbs to 19. We'll see what the post-combat action is for Diaz.
I would be very surprised to see a cycle of a Triumph, but I would also kind of love it.
It's going to be a play of the Triumph, though.
Yeah, getting the 5th land for the Nissa is somewhat important.
Scavenging Ooze also joining the party. That makes this Uro a little bit tougher. Teferi Time Raveler is going to make a Mystical Dispute happen. Hobbs will go ahead and pay for that.
Yeah, this is going to tap him out, though, and this is going to make it so that Nissa Who Shakes the World gets to come down, and you might see the dispute not count to Teferi and think to yourself, oh, okay, why would you do that? You're just burning your card for nothing. Well, what ends up happening is it creates this perfect window for Nissa to come down, and the Ether Gust is no longer there.
Coast is clear. Here's Nissa.
So now, the Nissa and the Joel Rail can come for the Teferi to guarantee its demise, but I would probably think that it would hold back, maybe. This is a really tough spot, but it's one that I do not envy the decision from either side. It is a very difficult play, difficult choice.
Yeah, you really want to take care of Teferi. You also would strongly prefer to not throw your Joel Rail in the garbage. So Stomping Ground is going to attack Teferi alone, and now Hobbs got to think about whether the Shark wants to jump in front.
Yeah, I would think that the static of the Teferi is slightly more important than the Shark, but it's also a losing battle. You know, like if you throw the Shark in front of the Stomping Ground, maybe next turn you don't have the option, but then you're just down a Shark, and you can afford to have the Shark stick around a little longer, you know.
Teferi down, Scavenging Ooze redeployed, and Hobbs picks up another Ether Gust. That is very interesting.
Mm-hmm. It'll be a nice way to help contain the Nissa Who Shakes the World for 2 more turns. You know, you can tag it right now with the Ether Gust. That'll put it on top, and then another Ether Gust stops it for another turn. And then Dispute the turn after that can stop it too. So if he really wants to, he can kind of keep Diaz in a holding pattern, and the Nissa is one of the best draws in the deck. I can't imagine that Aaron Diaz will put it on the bottom at this juncture, you know what I mean?
So Hobbs starts with the Uro, and now has 4 lands up, shocks in that last Manosaurus. That's relevant. Looking at 2 Gusts, also a possible Dispute plus a Gust. Now, the interesting thing is going for that Uro means now this Scavenging Ooze had to look at eating it. So Hobbs spent a lot of time thinking about where to put this Ether Gust because the Scavenging Ooze is a problem. Ends up targeting the Ooze, and Diaz is going to choose to redraw that next turn.
Okay. I think Hobbs just bit himself in the foot, or shot himself in the foot, bit himself in the butt, whatever you want. You know, he's in a weird spot now. By playing the Euro, he put himself in a position where he basically had to deal with the Scavenging Ooze. Now he can, and it'll allow him to Euro next turn and create a real lasting threat that might be difficult to deal with. But what's going to end up happening is that the Nissa Who Shakes the World is going to survive for like 5 more turns, and I think the mana generation and 3/3 generation is going to be too much for even Euro to tangle with.
We'll see how it goes. I mean, the Scavenging Ooze is getting gusted on the way back down. Diaz's last card is Wilderness Reclamation. If Hobbs can combine some gas with this Uro, he might be able to fight through it.
Yeah. All right. Nissa gonna make another 3/3, and this is gonna rumble in for 7. And now, if Diaz can find an answer to the Euro for next turn to get it out of the way, that's gonna be at least 10 damage coming across. And with Wilderness Reclamation, that thing could be an expansion explosion. You have to understand how much mana Diaz has access to with these scries from Castle Vantress. And now all Diaz needs to close the game is just 1 copy of Expansion Explosion.
Yeah, that'd be a big deal. As you see, the Reclamation is enabling some scrying with Castle Vantress. You see a card left on top for Diaz. Blaststone, I'm being told. Blaststone scry to the top, Stomping Ground scry to the bottom.
Well, it is enough to deal with the Euro, and it is uncounterable. 2 things that are desirable at this juncture. Although it will prevent any attacks from coming through next turn. But I think that's fine. The Shark itself is not going to be enough to pressure down the Nissa anytime soon.
Uro escapes, just a couple lands found by Hobbs. Holding on to Mystical Dispute, and the Shark hangs back. No attacks on the Nissa that turn. Diaz picks up and plays that Blast Zone.
Yeah, and even if the Euro gets blown up, not enough cards in the graveyard here for Hobbs to rebuy it next turn. And now he's down a game, facing off against a Nissa Who Shakes the World and a bunch of creature lands. And all he has is a Shark in play that's a 2/2 and a Mystical Dispute in hand. He's going to need a really big draw next turn if he wants... Oh, he gets to untap it now! And he gets to attack! Holy...
Oh yeah, the Nissa just untaps the Blast Zone. That's huge. Yeah, untap Blast Zone, crack this, get that Uro out of the way.
Now lets him attack for 3 this turn. What a play from Diaz. I didn't even see it. I just assumed that they were going to make a different land into a 3/3. Kill the Euro, but they would have missed some damage there. Found a way to get in and attack.
Reclamation untaps the land. Diaz gets to scry again with Castle Vantress.
Yeah, and this is one of the strengths of Team of Reclamation, just being able to continually churn through the deck with Castle Vantress and Wilderness Reclamation.
And Temple Garden off the top for Hobbs. That is no help.
Yeah, there's very little here that Hobbs can do with the resources that he has at his disposal. An attack is going to come through next turn for quite a bit, and if an Expansion Explosion's picked up, the game's going to end probably. But even then, Hobbs is going to need a huge draw in order to come back into this game.
Couple cards try to the bottom, and Expansion Explosion off the top.
That's a good one.
We're kind of at a point where the Nissa's kind of already doing it.
Right.
So Diaz has the ability to play this explosion a little conservatively. You know, Hobbs has a Mystical Dispute. I don't think Diaz has to be too worried about that.
No, this game is effectively over. I'm pretty sure Diaz can and will go for the kill. and has the ability to pay. Let me just double check this math. 2, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. So it can do it for 12. So it can do it for 9 and pay 3 is my count. And that's good enough.
Yeah. Yeah, 5 left over if there's an attempt at exact lethal.
And even if Hobbs had veto, well, Diaz still has Nisu shakes the world a bunch of lands. That's going to do it.
And here's the lethal explosion. Hobbs is thinking.
Oh, maybe I'll get him.
Mystical dispute.
I'll get that dollar.
Ooh, Diaz wisely pays. Bunch of cards in hand. Hobbs' life total to 0. And Aaron Diaz moving on to the finals with Team